Hey everybody, hope you're all doing good today. It's Friday afternoon. Thought it'd be a good time to give everybody a Table Rock fishing report. As it's everybody's probably getting ready to go out this weekend, maybe do a little bit of fishing. So just gonna go over a little bit what I've been experiencing down there the last couple weeks. Um, Water level is still way high on the lake right now, and I just can't believe that they're not letting any more water out of the lake. I really don't understand why that is because Taneycomo isn't high. There's really no reason to keep it up. I'm not sure what it is, but the water has been high now, super high for about a month, and it's creating an environment that I can't remember seeing it this high for so long. Considering the fact we haven't really had that much rain in the last 3 weeks, but anyway, it's creating a situation that's a little bit different than what you probably think. The biggest thing that I can tell everybody, and the advice I can give you is the fish are pretty much ignoring the fact that the water is high. I mean, you can go up and you can catch some fish flipping, and you can catch some fish in the bushes right now because you've still got over 10 foot of water in the bushes, and depending upon the part of the lake that you go in, you're going to have a little bit of change as far as in the bank composition and the bank angle and the water visibility in those areas. So some of the lakes, some parts of the lake are going to be a little bit better if you want to, fish around the flooded cover, whether it be flipping or top water or, throwing some type of a swim bait on the edge. A lot of different options there. Um, a lot of that is just figuring where it is going to be the best bite during the day that for that particular day. I've been fishing a lot on the lower end of the lake, and for me, the fishing the flooded cover is pretty. It's been pretty tough, and when you do get bit, I haven't been catching many quality fish doing that. But the big story for me, and one of the advice I can give everybody that wants to go to Table Rock right now, is to fish deep. Despite the fact the lake is super high, I think the majority of the bass in this lake are deep right now. In fact, I know they are. There's no doubt in my mind. And here again, the water clarities, even though the lake's high, the water clarities are really good all around the lake, and the fish are using that deeper water all over the lake. I don't care if you're fishing up the White River, the lower end of the James, down by the dam. All those fish are, to me, they're setting up in that 10 to 40 foot of water. And I want to talk a little bit about the deep fish in this particular report, simply because it's the predominant thing that's going on right now. When I say deep, you still have there's different groups and different personalities of deep fish. You've got those fish that are out off the bank and they're bottom oriented, and a lot of those fish are going to be in that 10 to 15 foot zone. Probably feeding on a lot of crawfish, that type of stuff. And then you have fish that are suspended out over that really deep water, and that's where a lot of the fish are right now. A lot of those fish are out in that 30 to 60 foot of water, not that deep, but they're suspended over say 10 to 15 foot down over that 30, 60 foot of water. And this is when your electronics really pays off. Of everybody that follows me on social media knows that I'm not a big fan of all the high-tech electronics, but this is one situation where myself, and if you're going to fish down at Table Rock right now, you really have to take advantage of that. And you don't have to have side imaging or down imaging to find these fish. If you've got a good unit that's got some good 2D sonar on it, you can get out there and graph around those flatter areas, and you can pick these fish up pretty easy right there. A lot of the fish that you see suspended in that 10 to 15 foot zone, or in fact, most of them, the ones you see suspended in that 10 to 15 foot zone, if they're in small groups, particularly horizontal groups, like less than 5 fish, those are bass. Most of the time, they're a mix of smallmouth and spotted bass. And, once you see that, all you have to do is idle past them, whip around, and start casting into that general area. And that's been a really good way to catch them. Another good way is as you get out on those flatter points right now, there's a lot of schooling activity, and a lot of those fish will give themselves away, where they're setting up at. And they're schooling all day long. You can find little, wads of them coming up not just early and late, but all day long as well. So, if I'm going to the lake right now, and if you guys are going down this weekend, or you want to go catch some fish, I'd highly recommend, fishing anywhere between, say the Baxter area down towards the dam, get out on those flat banks, not necessarily points. You don't have to be on points, but just those flatter banks, and just spend some time idling around looking. If you do want to fish the bottom, like I'm talking about, the points are better. You can get, doesn't really matter the type of point. It can be a steeper point, it can be a flat point, whatever, but there's a lot of fish using the bottom, like in 10 to 15 feet, except that those fish that are on the bottom a little bit shallower, they're not near as big as those suspended bass out a little bit deeper. But for me, the main bait that I've been using is the 3-inch Megabass Spark Shad, on the little 1/8 ounce Okashira jig head they make, throwing it on 6-pound test Seaguar and VizX line, Megabass whip snake spinning rod. Just making a long cast with that little swim bait, throwing it out there, counting it down to like 10, and just start slow reeling it back to the boat. I've been catching a lot of fish doing that. And you could also, I've been catching other fish on that particular bait on the bottom too. Well, I'll get out there on those points and just cast it to the bottom and just sort of hop it back almost like a jig. And that's been working pretty good too. But you can catch those, a lot of different ways to catch those fish. You definitely want to have a topwater handy, for when they come up schooling. Drop shot's going to catch you some fish. Of course, the tubes and the little football head jigs are always good down there this time of year. But that's the main deal. If you want to go down there and just catch numbers and, have a chance to catch some decent fish, particularly smallmouth, I'd suggest fishing deeper. And if you don't like to fish like that, which I don't, you can still get up in the bushes and you can catch fish. With the water as high as it is right now, just concentrate on those deeper point bushes, because even though the bushes on the points are still deep, a lot of times they're shallower than the bushes in the backs of the coves or on the sides. But we really need to get that water down. If that water would start dropping a little bit and maybe get it where you got like 4 to 5 foot of water in the bushes, I think you're going to have the flipping bite would really pick up. But right now, there's just so much water in those bushes that, for whatever reason, those fish just aren't comfortable around it. You think that they would want to get in the flooded forest and just meander around. But it's a really good study in bass behavior right now, because it shows you that in a clear water environment, bass prefer to live deeper than shallower, even if they have a tremendous amount of cover. Now, if you didn't have the water visibility, if you had like 2 foot of water visibility, 1.5 foot, 2 foot of water, you wouldn't have those bass using that deep water environment near as much. But when you have a clear water lake like Table Rock, where you have water visibilities over 6 feet deep, it doesn't matter how much shallow cover you have, those bass are going to want to be deep, particularly if you have a fishery that has a lot of spotted bass and smallmouth in it. And if you fish Table Rock as much as I do, you know that the lake has really, really gotten taken over. I don't mean this in a bad way. It's actually, it's great, but it's really gotten taken over on the lower end by smallmouth. For me, when I'm fishing on the lower end of Table Rock right now, and if I catch 30 fish in a day, probably at least 20 of them are going to be smallmouth down there right now. So they're coming on a little bit more and more all the time. But anyway, that's the fishing report. Fishing's still pretty good down there. I'm still doing instructional trips. If anybody's interested in getting out there and learning some finesse techniques, how to fish a little bit deeper out on Table Rock Lake, or if you want to take a flipping trip, shoot me a private message and we'll get something squared away. And also, like I said, I want to encourage everybody to, subscribe to the channel, like and share the videos. That's a really big deal for us, as fishermen. And I really, really appreciate people that help us out with this, because it really helps us, continue what we're doing and to put out this information. So anyway, have a good weekend. Hope everybody's staying safe, and we'll check in later. See you.